I've been thinking a lot about life lately, mostly on account of this being the year I turned 30. It's strange how the shedding of a decade, your 20s no less, can weigh so heavily on you. How the gripping fear of your own temporal existence, as cliche as that may sound, becomes all too apparent as you remove the last vestiges of youth and assume, or try to, the mantle of true adulthood. I guess this means I'm supposed to be doing something important. I thought this a couple months ago as I was editing a video for this channel, staring at the little characters on the screen, the same game I've played now for hundreds of hours, wondering what it would add up to in the end. I asked myself if what I was doing was important or valuable. I don't know if that's societal pressure pushing down on me and telling me that I'm wasting my time, or if that's me pushing down on me, asking myself if I'm actually doing something that feels worthwhile, that is memorable, I guess. All my life I've looked up to the great artists of the world, or those I perceive to be. People who've boiled down the seemingly untouchable essence of human experience and molded it, transformed it into art that, to me, becomes something akin to the spiritual. When I watch something like the legendary Japanese director Akira Kurosawa's 1985 masterpiece Ron and see the spectacle of the siege on screen as classical music blares, it elevates my own human experience, really, which I hate to say, but it's true. The meaning, the motives, the tragedy, it all comes together to create something more, for lack of a better term. When this happens, I often ask myself, could I ever make something like this? Could I move someone to the point of transcendence? Would I ever be able to construct a narrative, a story, an image, whatever, in a way that could permanently alter someone's perception of not only art, but themselves? Is that even something great artists do consciously, or is it simply innate? Did whatever magic or madness that birthed us from the void kiss the minds of a chosen few and allow them, though often at great cost, to do the seemingly impossible? I don't know. In the end, when all my days are gone, or rather, when all my creative energy is spent, if that's something that happens, will I be proud of what I made? I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Yet through this, I also asked myself, do I dare peel back a layer of the anonymity that YouTube has afforded me and reveal a slice of the pure self, the me behind this tomato-based persona? I suppose in a way this video is my attempt at making something I think I can be proud of, to give a piece of my soul back to the world which has opened its own up to me. I know we're a little into the year by now, but in essence this was and is my resolution for not only 2024, but the remainder of my days. There's a great quote by Kurt Vonnegut which I think articulates my desire better than I ever could. It comes from a letter he wrote as advice to high school students and says, "Practice any art, music, singing, dancing, acting, drawing, painting, sculpting, poetry, fiction, essays, reportage, no matter how well or badly, not to get money and fame, but to experience becoming, to find out what's inside you, to make your soul grow." So in essence, I guess I wish to become, to be more, to appreciate more, to love more of the things that I enjoy, and to cherish what I've already loved and have enjoyed, to hold tight the relics of that special, I guess, intangible, precious gift of creation. And through this desire to better myself, I've been thinking a lot about the narrative of the main character, or the protagonist in our own lives. We live in a society where it's easy to fashion ourselves as the protagonist and assume that in that fantasy that it is everyone else who is simply existing, that there is no value to being anything but the protagonist of the whole story, that it is our quest to find meaning and importance and to give clarity to the poor masses who will never fully know its light. I don't know if you've ever shared this sentiment, but I know I once did. I wanted to be someone people knew, that people cherished, and that they looked up to. Yet these days I'm content with just, being. I hate using that phrase because, again, it sounds a little cliche, but I think it's okay to not want to be a protagonist, at least not all the time, and instead be an NPC, or at least something akin to a more subordinate role, to step away from the hero's path and that supposed clarifying light and rest along the road, waiting to guide those along who can perhaps better mantle that obstacle, or simply because there's no longer purpose for you on that path, become the sage, the old wizard in the hut, the wise, the solitary, the peaceful, the person supporting the people who make the world great, or simply supporting the people in our own lives who we think of as such. In this video, I'd like to explore that idea, and to do so, I will call upon the story of one of my favorite characters in any media, Alexander the Iron Fist, a warrior jar from Software's 2022 multi-Game of the Year winning masterpiece, and yes, I mean masterpiece, Elden Ring. Like any would-be hero, Alexander is on a quest. Like many of us over the course of our lives, Alexander is seeking greatness. For you, it may be a doctorate in the field you've cared about all your life, or perhaps even the Nobel Prize or high political power. For Alexander, it is simple: to be counted among the greatest warriors who've ever lived. Now in Alexander's case, this act of becoming is taken a bit more literally, as the warrior jar is a living magical vessel of dead warriors, within which, squished into an unintelligible mass of flesh and bones, are the bodies of countless heroes and warriors who have been given either willingly or as prize for their defeat, added to the mass of experience and creating a new whole. It is a grim sentiment, but one which I believe parallels the victories and experiences in our own life. and how one takes that experience to further themselves. The bodies within Alexander merely the metaphor of this made manifest. Like so many of us, Alexander has left his home, a peaceful place known as Jarberg, at the end of nowhere and deeply secluded from the rest of the lands between, where Jars live in relative peace and quiet, frolicking in the flowers and the sunshine. And through this leaving has sought challenge and struggle, and in that quest into the lands between, Elden Ring's sprawling setting seeks to become, to be great, to be more. Now, throughout your own journey as the protagonist of Elden Ring, you can meet Alexander at various points on this path. If you follow his questline, that is, which is admittedly not always easy in From Software's games, as there's no markers, or at least there weren't until Elden Ring added them in a later patch. There's no quest logs or really anything guiding you along telling you, hey, maybe check on that NPC. But neither are those things true in real life. We must seek it for ourselves, our friendships, our ambitions, our relationships. But if you're lucky enough to follow this track, you will see a rather beautiful story. I'm making this in part to highlight the importance of the NPC and the value in that role, but also because I think when people think of these games, they imagine them as these insurmountably challenging and narratively cryptic experiences, which, while not completely incorrect, does not convey the whole truth. While there are challenges, each boss or obstacle a boulder you must roll up the hill to only watch come down as you approach the next one, these hurdles reflect life itself and how one can overcome them with enough perseverance or, I guess, luck. You do not need a doctorate in video game archaeology, philosophy, or to watch one of the thousands of YouTube videos available to you to understand this game, because all you need to know how to do is to understand what it is to be human, which is within you. And while I personally love the ambiguous, the mysterious, and obscure, it is my desire herein to show you that you don't have to understand everything to understand life, that you do not have to strive for the hero's journey to find value in yourself, to be content in who you are, your abilities, and your accomplishments, and that there is greatness in not being the best, but in simply being. Alexander, I believe, is a character who I think more than articulates this idea, this struggle, and if you're ready, I'd like to guide you on his journey. Now, while I'll obviously be spoiling Alexander's story for the sake of this video, I will do my best to obscure or generalize the narrative of Elden Ring, at least to the best of my abilities, in case you have not played it and decide to play it for yourself after this. Obviously, I assume some of you have played it already, but I don't feel I need to divulge the whole of its secrets to express my point. I'll give clarity when necessary, but only then. Now, let's begin. The player's journey into the lands between and Elden Ring officially begins in Limgrave. As one wanders this ancient land of heroes and myths, they may eventually stumble on a call for help.
Hello? Can you hear me?
This is our rather unimpressive introduction to Alexander, stuck and immobilized in a muddy hole, who, upon seeing us, promptly asks,
Oh, my stars! I'm so happy to see you. I am Alexander, also known as the Iron Fist. And as you can see, I'm stuck here. Please, can you help me out of this?
In this moment, players are presented with three choices. 1, get this nice talking jar man out of the hole and see what he's all about. 2, to walk away from the strange talking jar man and go about your business. Or 3, to kill the jar person. And now, assuming you're not a monster, then upon freeing Alexander, he will introduce himself and inform you of his quest to further his skills in the ways of war.
Well played, good sir. Well played. Though that mighty wallop of yours almost spelled the end of me. Well, I'm out now, and that's what counts.
It will give you an emote, triumphant delight, and a piece of exalted flesh, a literal hunk of meat from one of the warriors within himself as reward for freeing him. Further inquiry will reveal that he has left wherever it is he came from. He hasn't revealed this to us yet, but you know because I told you, and is heading for the rot-infested lands of Caelid, but more specifically to Redmane Castle, where a great festival of combat is supposed to take place.
I journey to the east, where I intend to further my education in the ways of war. And beyond these lands lie the scarlet, rot-blighted Caelid wilds. And upon their southern edge is Redmane Castle, in which a festival of combat is being held. I'd heard whispers of such festivities before. Doesn't the notion set your breast aflutter?
Though as of yet he does not reveal the specifics of this to you, and in fact he doesn't do so until you're at the festival itself. This festival plays a huge role in one of the endings of Elden Ring, and is where players may face one of the few demigod bosses in the game, Star Scourge Radahn, the strongest of the demigods, and a being of such great will and might that he was able to battle the very stars, locking them in place with the power of his gravity magic. Once a great and noble leader, his mind has since faded after his demigod half-sister Melania, the Blade of Miquella, unleashed a scarlet rot upon Radahn's home of Caelid after a long and bloody stalemate fought against each other in the Shattering War. This rot transformed Caelid into a festering land of bile and pus, rotting Radahn's body and mind from the inside out. Today he is merely a husk, wandering the field of battle forever in search of some unknowable thing At the sight of this terrible fate, the last of Radahn's loyal followers organized the festival as a way to kill their beloved leader properly. In glorious battle. It should be emphasized that Caelid truly is a terrible place. I hate it. Both in lore and in game, it's full of difficult encounters, cruel fates, and just unpleasant visuals. It is a turning point in the player's own journey where the sun fades from the sky and the path is darkened by struggle. It is intentionally this way as a reflection of when our own lives, at least I believe so, become difficult. It is also optional, notably. The entirety of it is unnecessary to complete the main quest, and therefore the game can be completed without ever going there. Just like the hard times in life, we are free to leave and never return, to avoid the hardships and seek greener, easier pastures. Perhaps you come out of morbid curiosity or because you're a completionist, but for me, I come for Alexander, and Radahn because he's my favorite demigod. Though we could meet him, that being Alexander, at Redmane Castle deep within Caelid right now, provided you've done one of the prerequisite tests to activate the event, you can actually find Alexander near the entrance to Caelid in a cave, which he has taken on his road to the festival. But, once again, Alexander is stuck, his path blocked by, this time, a door. And just like with a real-life obstacle, Alexander is pondering his next move when you arrive.
Going on here? A door from thin air? Well, stranger things happen at sea, or so I'm told. But onward to the Caelid wilds.
Here we don't have to do anything special because by sheer fact of finding Alexander, we've already opened the path for him. He will of course thank us for opening it and move on, although, and perhaps most interestingly, you don't have to do this. In fact, you don't even have to free him from the hole in the ground in Limgrave to meet him at the festival. He will, of his own skill and ability, find his own way through these struggles, these plights, and arrive ready to face the living dead demigod whether you want him to or not. It is one of my personal favorite details of Alexander's journey because even though you can help him, he doesn't need it. Even though he isn't the protagonist, he is still capable. Following this encounter, we are unlikely to see our dear Jar friend for some time because, as I said, we do have to do a few tasks to progress the game further and allow the festival to open up. Plus, Caelid, as I said before, is a bit difficult and dangerous, full of challenges and monstrosities, and is a little closer to a mid-game than an early-game area. Players will therefore not be ready to tackle its full offerings until probably a couple dozen hours into the game, and if they even want to at that. Although it would be strange, you'd think, for someone to avoid a challenge, but if you were told you could simply avoid a giant struggle in life, I would imagine the number of people who would take up the offer are not insignificant. That said, we are invested in Alexander's quest, and so we make the arduous journey to unlock the festival at Castle Redmane, where a choir greets us and sings solemnly as a host of assembled challengers stands ready to fight. Alexander, as he and I promised, is here waiting for us already. It is here, at long last, where he reveals that we are to fight none other than the demigod, General Radahn himself.
Ah, you came. How delightful. Indeed, I thought I might find you here. By the by, do you know for whom this festival is being held? Well, it is none other than General Radahn himself. To think, I could face a great champion of the Shattering, a demigod in the flesh. Oh, in truth, I quiver at the thought. Such is his frightful repute. But the fear simply assures me the ordeal is worth undertaking. Be sure to get a good vantage, my friend. I, Iron Fist Alexander, do hereby vow to unflinchingly brave this ordeal.
Now, Radahn has gone through many changes since the game was released back in 2022. Originally, this fight was hell. It was a gauntlet, and designed as a raid boss style fight where players could summon, and still can summon, various heroes and challenges to fight alongside you, to include Alexander to battle with Radahn in hopes of finally putting him to rest. Though that remains true, in the months and patches since Radahn has gone from overcorrected and weak to now only moderately difficult. Still, I'll never forget that early experience, and though it initially frustrated me, I look back on it fondly as one of the core memories of my first playthrough, which is huge for these games because, it was difficult and epic. From Radahn's awesome size and his comically tiny horse Leonard to the fact he can literally turn himself into a meteor and crash into the corpse-strewn sandy arena on top of you and the rest of the prospective heroes, instantly killing many of you in the process. I cannot tell you how many times I had to do this over simply because of how genuinely challenging he and it was. But likewise, I never felt like it was just me doing it. My friend Alexander and Ethan Blythe, another great NPC in Elden Ring, were there with me along with a host of other named but unknown characters aiming at their own hopes of greatness. Eventually, we defeat the demigod, his body crashing to the sand finally at rest, and the stars he held up for so long rush forward in an unimaginable meteor storm, which strike a certain part of the map and unlock the final path to that ending I talked about earlier. But that's a story for another time. After our epic struggle, we find Alexander rummaging on the ground, or so it seems, In truth, he is in a state of distress, and is not rummaging about for loose change, but in hopes of acquiring more, to become greater and stronger still.
On the other hand, I'm nothing but a crock. One hit was all it took to crack me, and for my insides to come spilling out. After that, I hid like a coward, and as such, I can hardly stand to face one such as you. But don't you think I've given up just yet. As luck would have it, there's a veritable mountain of warriors' bodies right here. If I can just squeeze this bunch down inside me, I'll be a mighty warrior again in no time. And you know, the bodies found here are exceedingly fine. Who could expect any less from the very warriors who fought in the shattering?
So Alexander, though beaten and literally broken, remains undaunted, at least relatively, on his path. With a smile, I guess internally anyway, he grabs hold of the mounds of the worthy dead and seeks to replenish himself with their essence, to include that of the now dead Radon himself. Yes, our dear Alexander is about to get a massive XP boost and a few new abilities to boot, but we will have to discuss those later once we reach the mountaintops of the Giants, a late game area. For now, let us turn to Alexander's home of Jarberg, located in the eastern part of the wet and misted lands of Liurnia, just beneath a large tower, where we are greeted with a familiar sound.
Help me! I'm stuck! Hello?
It is here we find Alexander stuck in a hole just beside the village he longed to look upon one last time. With an oil pot acquired by following a trail given to us by the NPC Blythe I mentioned at the festival, we are able to unstick Alexander from his prison, to which he will give us 3 pieces of exalted flesh, and explain to us his home and his reason for returning.
Thanks. To you and your razor-sharp wits. Oh. As a token of my thanks, I'd like you to have this. Yeah, there were countless oil jars back where I'm from, actually. And now I know what it's like to be one of them. Yes, indeed. I too have a home. Though it is one to which I have vowed not to return. So, I thought I might look out from atop the cliff. But as I drew closer and closer, pow, wouldn't you know it, I was perfectly stuck in that blasted hole. I can feel the warriors inside admonishing me for my mawkishness. To walk the path of champions, one cannot cleave to the past. I'm headed to the Fiery Mount in the north. I can strengthen myself there without fear of cracking this vessel. I will forge myself anew in its flames.
These words in particular have always resonated with me, and I believe where Alexander begins his true transformation from would-be protagonist of his own story to an NPC or guardian of ours. To walk the path of champions, one cannot cleave to the past, and yet, despite his own proud boasting of this, we can feel the weight of this moment for him, the doubt, the pain of having lost to Radon so totally, to have come so far and be found lacking in every conceivable way, to ponder letting go, to become whole in the simplicity of a life with his people. Yet with his promise to forge himself anew, a literal baptism to becoming something else, I believe Alexander is allowed to shed his pride, his ambition, and set himself on the path to satisfaction within himself, which ultimately is where I think every great quest comes to an end. Why seek the journey any longer if the end goal, happiness, or I don't know what else you would call it, is complete? But we're not quite there yet. It will be some time until we meet Alexander, who will be seeking to forge himself anew in the lava-soaked lands of Mount Gelmir, where the serpent demigod Praetor Rykard rules from the volcano manor. At the center of a great lake of lava, after battling with a serpentine lizard beast made of living stone, we can find Alexander calling out to the flames in hopes of hardening his shell. Yet it's pretty apparent from the large, still fresh-looking cracks on Alexander's shell that the flame is not quite hot enough.
Good sir, what business might you have in such a place as this? I hardly think you're here to temper yourself with flame, considering that fleshly form of yours. Your timing, though, is impeccable as ever. I've been making just the thing for you on my journey here. Take it. I'm sure it'll suit you to a T.
Here the player finds out that Alexander, like a loving mentor or wise old teacher, has been thinking of us, and gives the player the jar helmet, an item made famous in the Elden Ring community thanks to the player Let Me Solo Her, who assisted perhaps hundreds, maybe thousands of players in their fights against Malenia. the one who fought with Radahn and who is considered by many to be the hardest boss in the game. This is our final optional encounter with our dear Jar friend. However, the climax of the story of Elden Ring, or what I consider the climax, and Alexander's own, I believe, happen in the same moment. Late in the game, in the mountaintop of the giants, where Alexander seeks to reforge himself, and where our own journey inevitably takes us, there is a large ancient kiln of the giants we must reach the top of to enter the final act of the game. It is here where we will irrevocably alter the worlds of the lands between forever. At the boss fight just before this act against an ancient and lonely fire giant, perhaps the last living member of their race, that we see what Alexander is truly made of. Just inside this boss arena, situated at the base of the great kiln, there glows his welcoming summon sign. And though he will not speak to you, should you take him on this quest with you, your last chance to fight by his side, you will be rewarded for your aid in his journey of becoming. For Iron Fist Alexander is not simply a man of words, but of might. With the power of Radahn and the glorious dead, he has become a great warrior indeed, flame trailing from his body as he launches himself into this massive foe, taking them down with your aid and setting you up to follow whatever conclusion your journey has put you on. The culmination of Alexander's story, though notably not the end, means so much to me, for he is a being that wants to be great, and through that want has made himself so, though always second to you, the Tarnished, and yet he's happy for you and himself, a true friend and companion by your side when you need him, which is a crucial thing in the harsh worlds of the lands between. When the world is changed by our actions and with the aid of Alexander, we the player are whisked away to a land frozen in time, crumbling Farum Azul, where a great maelstrom rages around a ruined city suspended in the sky forever. It is here we have our final meeting with our dear Alexander.
I see you finally made it here yourself. The city hanging in the air is slowly crumbling. What an incredible place we find ourselves. But that aside, you're certainly a force to be reckoned with, eh? I doubt there's a single soul who could have handled that giant other than you. He was practically a god. Of course, I count myself, the great Alexander, among the many. Which means I've but one thing to ask of you. Would you kindly undertake my ordeal? Come and tell me when you're ready. I've been longing to fight a warrior as accomplished as you.
Here, in the crumbling ruins of a society which itself once ruled long ago, Alexander throws down his gauntlet with a smile and asks us to face him, to prove once and for all who is the stronger. Now, it may be easy to misunderstand this confrontation as Alexander simply trying to prove to himself that he is your better, when he does not in fact believe this. For if the player is defeated by Alexander, he laments the loss, asking how they made it this far at all with such weakness. How they managed to slay the demigods in their path to becoming Elden Lord, how they could have failed so close to the end. But when the player inevitably beats Alexander, he says,
Victory was impossible. This vessel was found lacking. My thanks. I knew you were the stuff of champions. It was a marvelous battle. I implore you, take what I bequeath from inside me. All vessels are destined to one day break. But the great Alexander lived as a warrior to his last.
And so it is here, at the end of his life, Alexander laughs. His journey over, his mountaintop reached. Though he has failed to become the greatest warrior of all time, he crushes himself, his death, his end, in his own hands. As his body collapses, a piece of his jar and innards fall to you, that you may take on your own journey to that mountaintop and remember him there. The Shard of Alexander is not only one of the best amulets in the game, its accompanying item, the innards of Alexander, are a vital part of another character's story, one we the player never truly see. In the town of Jarburg there lives a young Jar named Jarbairn, who the player, if they happen to meet them, can give the innards to. He has a bit more of a story than this with another character named Dialos, but for our purposes I'll assume you've done that because it sort of messes up the narrative if I try to explain it all right now.
Wow. Cuz, are these insights from Uncle Alexander? Thank you, cuz I'm a warrior Jar, so I need to be strong. I can really have them, right? I understand. I'll get strong. Strong enough. I deserve to have Uncle's insights. I don't think I'll see you again. When I set out, warriors are supposed to work alone. Goodbye, cuz. And thanks for everything. I'll never forget you, cuz.
And with this final dialogue, the tale of Alexander is over. His life spent, but his memory, his power, and his spirit living on forever in the dreams of another. To give oneself to or for the collective whole is the most I believe we can hope to accomplish in this life. Even if we never see the fruits of that labor, it is still worth the effort to help the next generation or the one following it achieve greatness. Even if we are the NPC to another's inevitable heroic tale, it does not diminish our role in it. Even if history never remembers the Alexanders besides that one, they lived. They were. They are. They will always be. I have no idea if I was able to articulate just how much this story or this character means to me. How much the idea of succeeding in failure or letting others carry the torch to victory on your behalf or after you're gone means to me. We are a species which stands on the shoulders of a billion giants who came before us. Surely some among them were like Alexander. And though part of that ego which lurks deep within my psyche screams for me to push myself further, to be the best, to be more and more, in an ever-consuming Ouroboros of desire until I lose myself in that vision, I refuse. Because for me, happiness is Jarberg, sitting in the flowers of the sun. My days of wandering culminated in the reward of its fruits. I will not stop trying to become here, but I will not try to become great. At least not perhaps in the eyes of other people. I will simply be content wherever, or rather as whomever I end up. Pursue who I wish to be, and hopefully use that self to guide other people to their own happy selves, I guess. The late great American literary critic and scholar Howard Bloom advocated for us, all of us, to read the best of what was written, to connect us to each other, to consume these great works because it gives us...
Well, in the first place, I would say cognitive power. That is to say, an increase in one's own ability to think and one's own ability to talk on the basis of that thinking. And the next would be rhetorical power, the ability to understand better the uses of metaphor, which according to Aristotle was the special mark of genius in every one of us. But beyond all that, a real capacity for apprehending otherness, for, on the one hand, realizing that we are trapped inside our own mortality, and on the other, that our only hope of getting beyond that trap of mortality is to have some real sense of other selves. We read many books is the ancient adage because we cannot know enough people.
I'm not saying that playing Elden Ring and doing Alexander's questline is akin to reading Dostoevsky or Shakespeare or anything like that, but I believe it allows us to grow, to empathize and to love the essence of those who came before us and those who exist around us. The brave, the ambitious, the noble, the proud, to smile at the shadow of our ancestors who made it possible for us to stand here today, to sit for a while in the Jarberg of your own imagination and feel content. For those familiar with my channel, you're probably wondering why I posted this video on a Thursday and not my usual Monday or Friday. Well, today, February 15th, is that once looming birthday. That 30-year barrier crossed irrevocably, whether I want to or not. And though the ultimate meaning of its passing is as of yet unknown to me, I feel confident in knowing myself at least a little more. That I know who I want to be in the next few decades, I hopefully have. I suppose if anything, I wish the same for you. That you, like Alexander, find your happiness in this life. Be it as the greatest warrior that ever lived, to help someone else become something akin to that, or simply to be a good parent, partner, friend, and person. I know the latter is what I want. I suppose you'll have to figure out what you want for yourself.